Well, now we're going to look at equations as functions. And the instructions in your book said to make a table and then draw a graph. We're going to draw a graph on a calculator and then make a table, or then show you where you can find the table. And I've got a screenshot here on the right of a TI-84 calculator. And if you look at this button right here, well, it says y equals, and this is our primary graphing, where we're going to do most of our graphing through this function. And so we have to get these equations into a y equal form. Now I'm going to deal with this second one, this equation right here first. And we're going to put it in that form, and then in a moment we're going to jump over to a live calculator where I can actually enter the function. And we can take a look at it, and we can see if that function is going to pass the vertical line test, which would tell us that it is in fact a function. So the first thing I'm going to do with this equation here is I'm going to swap it around. So I got y plus 8 equals 4x, which I'm able to do. I've not changed the value of anything. I've just moved it from one side to the other because I want my y to be on the left of the equality. Now, in order to get this in y equals something, and one thing we're going to learn is we're getting ready to put it in something that's called y-intercept form. We'll be talking more about that a little bit later. But I'm just going to subtract 8 from both sides of this thing. And so when we do, we're going to end up with y equals 4x minus 8. All right, now we've got that in the form that we can use our calculator to graph it. Now, in this top equation, and the reason why I saved it for the second view, there's not a y in here. The only thing I've got is an x. So when we get to the calculator, I'm going to show you that if you go into this apps button, you may or may not already have the app that I'm going to look for, which is the Inequalities app. And if you don't have it, you can download it for free from Texas Instruments. But still, I want to isolate the x by itself. And so in order to do that, I'm going to divide both sides of this equation by 4. And once we do, we've got y equals 2. All right, so I've done the manipulation here with my two equations. And now let's move over here to the calculator and let's graph these. Well, we're going to learn that one of them is a function, the other one is a relation, the other one is not a function. But we'll figure out which one that is here momentarily. All right, well, we're over here on our calculator, and I see I've already got a function in there, so let me go in here and clear this. I'm going to hit y equals, and I'm going to clear this reciprocal function out first. Now, if you recall from the previous slide, we had one of our equations that we had transformed into y equals 4x minus 8. So let's graph this. Now, as I hit each button, it is going to appear in red, so you can follow along. So I'm going to go 4x plus 8. No, it's negative 8, wasn't it? Let me move over here. Let me replace this with minus 8. 4x minus 8. Now let's take a look at our graph. Okay, so here I see in blue I got a graph, and now let's think about this. I can't draw on this particular screen, but if I were to draw a series of vertical lines up and down this coordinate plane, I would only cross this graph, each vertical line would only cross this graph at one point. And so therefore, y equals 4x minus 8, I can say, is a function. Now let's go in and look at the table. And I can hit second and go back to the graph button. And if you look right above the graph button, I see table. I'm going to hit second graph. And so here I've got a table. Let me scroll up a little bit with this. And this gives us a table of x and y values. So that when x is 0, I see that y is equal to -8. Well, that makes sense. I mean, if I got 4x minus 8, and if 0 was substituted for x, well, 4 times 0 is 0, and all I'm left with is -8. And when x is -4, y is -24. And when x is 3, y is 4. Let's go back and look at our graph. And let's look where x is 3, and let's see what y equals on the graph. All right, so here I've got x is 3. It's at this point. And if we go up, we hit the graph right there. And if I go over here to the y-axis, let's see that 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So when x is 3, y is 4. Now, we want to graph that other graph. We had reduced it down to x equals 2. And I'm going to go into, but I don't see an x equal here, do I? No, I do not. But if I can get one. So I'm going to go in here to apps, and I'm going to choose this. In this case, it's option 7. May be different on your calculator depending upon what, how many apps you got. But I'm going to choose option 7. Then it tells me to press any key, so I'm going to press any key. Now, if you look up here in the top left-hand corner, I now have an x equal. And so I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to choose that option. And so now I've got x equals 2. And, well, let's go and graph it also in blue, but that should be okay. I'm going to hit the graph button. There's my first graph, and here comes my second graph. This is x equals 2. So in other words, whenever x is 2, y can be any of these values, and therefore it is not a function, because y can equal anything when x is 2. And obviously, if I'm applying the vertical line test, well, this is, in fact, a vertical line. So therefore, it is not a function. So 4x minus 8 is not a function. 4x equals y minus 8, y plus 8, excuse me, is a function. I'm going to go back into y equals. I'm going to clear out that first graph we drew. So I'm going to hit clear. And then I'm going to go back to the table. We're going to see what it looks like. In fact, it just shows nothing, right? I don't even have a y value. So no matter what happens, no matter what the value of x is, it's just, just got a graph of 2. Well, let me go, and there we go. Okay? And so it is not a function.